Opening a work session on House Bill 2002. Mr. Committee Administrator, what do we have?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. House Bill 2002 had its public hearing on March 20th, and the committee had quite an in-depth discussion of what the measure at that point with the -2 amendments did. I do want to draw attention to the -5 amendments that have been placed on OLIS. I will call attention to a number of the changes that are in the -5 from the -2 that was presented on the 20th. The -5 add Oregon Health and Science University to the definition of public body. It clarifies the permitted legal action by an individual to enforce a right to decisions about individuals' reproductive health. It also clarifies the intended application of prohibitions on interference with an individual's exercising of reproductive health rights. The -5 amendment also clarified the right of a minor to consent to receive reproductive health information and services, and the prohibition against providers disclosing the receipt of the information of those services. The -5 amendment changes the responsibility to provide grants to public institutions of higher education to comply with the medication abortion access requirements in the measure and report on reproductive health access and cost. Changes those responsibility from the Higher Education Coordinating Commission to the Oregon Health Authority. The -5 amendment also clarify the duration of the contraceptive prescription required in the medical assistance program. Clarifies the prohibited adverse actions by malpractice insurers. It also clarifies the prohibition on healthcare practitioner licensing board from suspending or revoking a license solely for providing reproductive or gender-affirming healthcare services. -5 amendment also clarifies the meaning of because of sex for purposes of unlawful discrimination in employment. Finally, the -5 amendment establishes standards regarding interstate actions related to reproductive health care and gender-affirming treatments. With the -5 amendment, there has been a fiscal impact statement that has been issued. There is no revenue impact, and the measure does have a subsequent referral to the Joint Committee on Ways and Means.
Chair. No.
Representative Javadi.
I move to adopt the -2 amendment dated March 31st, 2023 to House Bill 2002.
What date was it?
March 31st, 2023.
Is the -2?
-2.
Representative Javadi moves the -2 to House Bill 2002 dated March 31st, 2023. Is there any discussion on the -2 amendment?
Chair.
Representative Javadi.
Thank you, Chair. The -2 amendment would replace the measure with the text of House Bill 2423, a bill that was introduced by Leader Brees Iverson and was not granted a public hearing. The -2 amendment would establish the Pregnancy Launch Program to provide resources to new and expecting mothers in an effort to provide support for childbirth as an alternative to abortion. The amendment would also establish a pregnancy resources hotline to assist new and expecting mothers with navigating the variety of resources available to them. This amendment does not restrict abortion, but seeks to support the decision thousands of Oregon women make every year to become mothers. A study in 2013 by the BMC Women's Health studied a sample of 954 abortion-seeking women and found that 40% identified as not financially prepared as a contributing factor or primary factor in why they were seeking an abortion. I would encourage your support of the -2 amendment to ensure the information and access to resources are presented to expecting mothers so that they can make a fully informed decision.
Is there any other person that would like to make a comment about the -2 amendment? Representative Javadi, I believe every person should have the freedom to make their own personal health care decisions. We only need to look, I think, to states where abortion bans seem to be restricting access to the full spectrum of reproductive health care and watch some of the negative outcomes for pregnant people. People have abortions for many reasons, and no healthcare provider should have to wait until the patient's life is on the line to provide basic and essential abortion care. I want individuals and their families to be able to make that decision. Regarding pregnancy resource hotlines, grant programs, etc., I worry that they don't allow for the provision of abortion services. Our state's laws already support the right to access to abortion, and restricting services or access to information on abortion services, I think will only harm the health of pregnant individuals seeking care in our state. And so for that, I'll be a no. Can we get a roll call, please, on the -2?
Rep. Bowman.
No.
Rep. Conrad.
No.
Rep. Dexter.
No.
Rep. Deal.
Yes.
Rep. Javati.
Yes.
Rep. Morgan.
Yes.
Rep. Pham.
No.
Rep. Tran.
No.
Vice Chair Goodwin.
Yes.
Vice Chair Nelson.
No.
Chair knows.
Chair Nelson votes no. -2 amendment is not adopted. Do we have any other amendments that Representative Deal?
Chair Knowles, I move to approve the -11 amendment dated 3/27/2023,
What was the date?
March 27th, 2023.
Vice Chair Deal. Representative Deal moves the -11 amendment to House Bill 2002 dated March 27, 2023. Representative Deal, would you like to say a little bit about your amendment?
Yes, thank you. The -11 basically treats detransition treatments the same and puts them on equal footing as gender-affirming treatments. The whole idea is it requires insurance to cover and treat detransitioners with the same care and compassion that we treat gender-affirming folks. The -11 also includes a change to the malpractice insurance statute of limitations from 5 to 10 years for doctors practicing gender-affirming treatments. And it also sets up a advisory council that would develop a document outlining the risks associated with transition. And that document would be included in the informed consent process. So here's where I'm at with this thing, Chair. I mean, I know this bill's going to pass. Every legislator in this building on the Democratic side has signed on to this bill. And a major element of 2002 is mandating health insurance coverage for gender-affirming treatment. The problem is, and I've talked to lots of parents, therapists, doctors, and detransitioners. It is indisputable that some youth are being harmed in our process. We are not following adequate assessment processes, and we're catching kids in this process. And I feel for those kids and young adults. It's not just kids. So if we're going to go ahead with gender-affirming treatment without fixing any of these underlying problems or even researching these underlying problems, we're going to end up with more children and more young adults being harmed. And that's why this -11 is in place. It will require that detransitioners get the same health insurance coverage as transitioners. And I think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Finish? Okay. Anybody else have a comment? So, Representative Deal and colleagues, I believe the vast majority of people who engage in and need this kind of care as contemplated by this bill find that the process and the procedures are successful for them. There are risks in any medical procedure and medicine, including the risk of doing nothing. But the risk and assessment is best left to providers and patients and their families, and I think not us deciding here what is best for them. I certainly don't know what is best for every person. If a person in my life did not identify with the gender that they were assigned with at birth, I would want them to have access to providers with knowledge and experience of how to make an individualized plan for themselves and how to address it. These providers, I believe, first and foremost, they ask questions, they show compassion, and assess over a period of time the most appropriate care. And sometimes that might include medical interventions. Sometimes it might not. This is a bill that's ultimately about insurance coverage, not about treatment modalities and standards of care, which are already determined as medically necessary by medical professionals when they are indicated. As I've already said, House Bill 2002 is about being able to consult with a provider or physician to make a deeply personal decision that impacts your health and well-being. In the very rare cases where someone and their healthcare provider decides the best course for them is to make a revision to a previous gender-affirming treatment they received, I believe the language in House Bill 2002 with the -5 amendment already covers that, and that's on page 11, line 8 of House Bill 2002. It gives the department the ability to provide further guidance, page 11, 9 through 5 of the dash amendments in terms of rule.
Can I respond to that, Chair?
You can make a statement, sure.
I'll make a statement. So the best data that we have today, and this data changes fast because this population that's being treated is changing rapidly. We have probably 10 to 30% of people over a period of time will detransition.
I think that's very high, Representative.
Now,
That's not the
I'd be
data
happy to
that I-
share the data with you.
All right.
That is the current state of the data.
I will
Now,
tell
not
you, I
all
don't
those
agree with
people,
that.
not all those people have had surgery, but that's the state of the data. Currently, you can get gender-affirming treatment covered by insurance, but if you face regret and you want to change, that is not covered under insurance. And I shared with you a story of a young man who faced that very situation. He got breast implants and he was castrated and immediately faced regret. And as he got clean off his meth and the drugs he was using, he went back to the hospital to have the breast implants removed. And he was denied because the Oregon Health Plan would not cover that. They would put them in, they would not take them out. He took his COVID money and found a doctor that would do this treatment for him. He could not afford full anesthesia. So he had local anesthesia on his breasts as they ripped these things out of his chest while he was conscious. That is what I'm looking at. That is not right. But that is why this Dash 11 is here. I think he deserves that opportunity just like anybody else.
Representative Deal, this is what I would ask that you do. First of all, I don't agree with your assertion about the number of people that regret the decision they make to change their gender.
I'm happy to share the studies.
Okay, we can disagree about that. Here's what I would say about the story that you just shared from that individual. I would ask that you provide, as much as you can, the information about that circumstance, because I think some of the things that you're putting on the record, I have to say, I find them pretty incredible. The fact that a physician would seek to provide medical care to someone who needed full anesthesia and gave it with something, I'm not going to use the words used properly, something that you said was more localized, as opposed to what would be appropriate care for that procedure. I have to tell you, I find that story very incredible, if it is to be believed. I think that doctor engaged in some form of malpractice, and I would submit to you that the physician that agreed to do that surgery probably deserves to be investigated.
Well, it's interesting because I would say the doctor who inserted those.
Allowing it because he's going
that's fine.
here, so I'm going with it.
The doctor who inserted those, and 2 days later, this young man feels regret. And the fact that they were put in with insurance, and he had to pay out of his own pocket to have them removed. That is what's horrific to me.
Representative Deal, I would ask that you please provide me as much detail as you can about that, because I think that needs to be investigated. That's pretty out there.
It is an example of what.
It is an example that
even-
you've shared. Yes, okay, I'm gonna
Yeah.
say you and I don't agree about this. So if you're gonna get me to look into it, I'm gonna need a lot more information.
It's not just that case, though.
Well, okay, but it is the case that
Do
you
you
shared.
think that young man should have had insurance coverage if it paid for him to put him in?
I think that
should they
that
be
child,
taken
that
out?
young man deserved a much better, more caring, compassionate physician and somebody who would have
Yes, he
provided
did.
anesthesia.
And he did not get it when he went back
I
to the
would
place
like
that did.
I would like the ability to
that put those in.
investigate that. That's pretty out there.
I would agree.
Any other comments on the Dash 11? Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Rep. Bowman.
No.
Rep. Conrad.
Yes.
Rep. Dexter.
No.
Rep. Deal.
Yes.
Rep. Javadi.
Yes.
Rep. Morgan.
No.
Rep. Pham.
No.
Rep. Tran.
No.
Vice Chair Goodwin.
Yes.
Vice Chair Nelson.
No.
Chair Nos.
Chair Nos votes no. The dash 11 is not adopted. Do we have any other amendments? Representative Goodwin.
Yes. Chair Nos. I move to adopt the Dash 4 Amendment to House Bill 2002 dated March 22nd of 23.
Vice Chair Goodwin moves to adopt the Dash 4 Amendment to House Bill 2002 dated March 22nd of 2023. Vice Chair Goodwin, would you please explain your amendment?
Yes, the Dash 4 Amendment would replace the measure with the text of House Bill 2526, and it was a bill from Representative Breeze Iverson that was requested to be heard, but not granted a public hearing. The amendment would establish a pregnancy resource hotline requiring a woman seeking abortion to have a consultation regarding the resources available to them a minimum of 48 hours prior to having an abortion, with the exception of a medical emergency. This allows women to make the most informed decision possible with the full awareness of the resources available to them should they choose to carry a pregnancy to term. Oregon needs streamlined and transparent information on available resources for pregnant mothers to help them succeed both during and after their pregnancies. I would encourage you to support the Dash 4 Amendment so that women in Oregon are fully aware of the alternatives to abortion and the resources that are available to them should they make a choice other than the choice to end their life of their unborn child. We should strive to provide equitable access to all options, risks, and information needed to make a fully informed medical decision. So instead of, even in this state, we just recently heard of assisted suicide. Even an individual seeking assisted suicide has at least 2 medical consults before that is granted. I think for a young woman in distress to walk in same day and obtain an abortion without 48 hours to think about and to be given her other options is the least we can do for her and for that unborn child.
Anybody else? Representative Tran.
It took me 7 pregnancies to have my 3 beautiful children, and the abortions that I had never was a rush. It was my decision with my doctor, with my family, and my religion that I made those decisions. I was never rushed, and a hotline to speak with somebody that do not know my situation, I cannot support that.
Okay. Not seeing any other hands. Can I get a roll call, please, on the Dash 4?
Rep. Bowman.
No.
Rep. Conrad.
No.
Rep. Dexter. No. Rep. Deal.
Yes.
Rep. Javati.
Yes.
Rep. Morgan.
Yes.
Rep. Bam.
No.
Rep. Tran.
No.
Vice Chair Goodwin.
Yes.
Vice Chair Nelson.
No.
Chair Nos.
Chair Nos votes no. The Dash 4 is not adopted to House Bill 2002. Do we have any other amendments that people want to bring forward? Because if we do, I'd like to give them a chance. Otherwise, I'd like to call on Representative Nelson on the Dash 5. Not seeing any. Representative Nelson, can I get a motion, please, on the Dash 5?
Chair Nos, I move to adopt the Dash 5 amendments dated March 24th, 2023.
Vice Chair Nelson moves to adopt the Dash 5 amendment dated March 2023 to House Bill 2002. Is there any discussion on the Dash 5? Representative Nelson.
Actually, I'll wait for the base bill.
Chair. Can they read a brief summary on the Dash 5 again?
Can we provide a brief summary on the Dash 5 again, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, happy to provide a summary. I do also want to note that I do think we have some of the people who worked on the bill for any specific questions, both either in the room or on Teams. The Dash 5 amendment, so when the measure was, when committee had the public hearing on the measure, the Dash 2 amendment was in front of the committee. The Dash 5 amendment makes a number of clarifications to what was in that measure, including adding Oregon Health and Science University to the definition of public body, clarifying the permitted legal action by an individual to enforce the right to decisions about reproductive health, clarifying the intended application of prohibitions on the interference with an individual's exercising of reproductive health rights, clarifying the right of a minor to consent to receive reproductive health information and services, and the prohibition against providers for disclosing the receipt of that information. It also changes the responsibility to provide grants to public institutions of higher education to comply with the requirement in the measure that medication abortion access be provided at higher institutions. Changes the responsibility from the Higher Education Coordinating Commission to the Oregon Health Authority. Clarifies the duration of contraceptive prescriptions to be required in the medical assistance program. It also clarifies the prohibited adverse actions by malpractice insurers for providers providing reproductive or gender-affirming care. It also clarifies the prohibition on healthcare practitioner licensing boards from suspending or revoking a license solely for providing reproductive or gender-affirming healthcare services. It also clarifies the meaning of because of sex for purposes of unlawful discrimination in employment. And finally, the -5 amendment, the other change from the -2 is establishing standards regarding interstate actions related to reproductive health care and gender-affirming treatments.
I know it's a lot. Any other questions or comments? I need to put something on the record, so I want to do that last. I'm not seeing it.
I'll do the base bill. Go ahead.
Okay. So, committee, before we vote, I want to clarify the record on portions related to insurance coverage for gender-affirming care. The -5 includes directions for the Department of Consumer and Business Services to do rulemaking. We have told the commercial insurers the goal is that rulemaking will be done in collaboration with them to incorporate their feedback about the current limitations on gender-affirming care within the network broadly defined. And by network, we mean network of providers. Insurers are concerned that the implementation date of 2024 is too soon. I'm going to state on the record that the market exams are not going to take place until 2026, and we know that the goal of the first year is not to be punitive. If there's no other comments or questions, I'd like a roll call vote, please, on the -5.
Rep. Bowman.
Aye.
Rep. Conrad.
No.
Rep. Dexter.
Yes.
Rep. Deal.
No.
Rep. Javati.
No.
Rep. Morgan.
No.
Rep. Pham.
Yes.
Rep. Tran.
Aye.
Vice Chair Goodwin.
No.
Vice Chair Nelson.
Aye.
Chair Nos.
Chair Nuss votes yes. The -5 is adopted. Representative Nelson, can I get a motion, please, on the amended bill?
Chair Nos, I move House Bill 2002 as amended to the floor with a do pass recommendation and that the bill be referred to the Joint Committee on Ways and Means by prior reference.
Vice Chair Nelson moves House Bill 2002 as amended by the -5 to the floor with a do pass recommendation that the bill be referred to the Joint Committee on Ways and Means by prior reference. Is there any discussion on the bill as amended? Representative Javity, Representative Deal, Representative Nelson, Representative Conrad, Representative Morgan.
Thank you, Chair.
Right on.
I have several concerns with the bill, but for the sake of time, I'll just discuss two. The first is expanding coverage to, it's not expanding coverage, allowing abortion services for our most vulnerable population, children 15 and under, will no longer need the consent of their parents. And while I think I understand that there are some circumstances where abuse may warrant a parent not being involved in that type of decision, I feel like the way that it's written now is anti-parent. It basically removes mom and dad from a conversation where, especially at this young age, these children trust and need sometimes parental input at the most at these very important times. This is a big decision. And I think that whether we're talking about abortion or transitioning, that parents, when possible, the default shouldn't be that we don't need them. And then secondly, with respect to what we're doing a lot for abortion, but when we've discussed today these amendments that would have brought more resources to bear for young people and on older women who want to know more about what their full palette of options are. We've said no, and I think we're limiting their choice and not fully having a full discussion with them about what other options might be available to them in case they do want to explore keeping the child in this situation. So just some of my concerns and a few of the reasons why I'll be a no today on this base bill. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Deal.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, to me, this is a horrific bill. One of the points, and I'll emphasize what Rep. Javity said, the parents are not involved by default. Now, when you write the bill, you may be thinking, well, we want to make sure that they don't have to be involved in extreme cases, in cases where the parent is not a good parent or whatever. But in practice, when you write a law like that, in practice, the default becomes not engaging the parents. I've talked to a lot of parents. That is what happens by default. And so we're having young women in a terrible spot, being separated from their parents, and having to face this decision on their own. It's a catastrophe. It is a catastrophe. And it doesn't reflect that the parents need to be involved. We also talk about how, and I heard the testimony, I heard on the gender side, heard him say, we follow WPATH standards. WPATH standards for adolescents and children specifically say, in the version 8, keep the parents involved. Parents should be involved all along the way. When a child is 15 years old in Oregon, they don't have parental involvement. They're not required to. Right there, we're violating the WPATH standards that we claim to say we're following. So I think it's ripping at parents' rights, and it's putting our kids who are already in a vulnerable spot, signing up to have irreparable harm.
Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've said some of this before, but I will say it again. There's data out there showing that Oregon is the most pro-abortion state in the country, with over 70% of Oregonians supporting abortions in all or most cases. And that includes a solid majority of independents and about a third of Republicans. And personally, I believe that if it were not for Dobbs, that we would not have a Speaker Rayfield. Abortion is important to Oregonians, and we must protect it. And we must ensure that those who need gender-affirming care have access to it and get it. Thank you.
Representative Morgan. Did you not have your hand? Oh, you did.
No, I did. I'm just trying to understand the comment about the speaker. So this is, you're right, there's a lot of personal feelings that people have on the topic. I do not agree that 70% of Oregonians support completely unlimited abortion, especially third trimester. I do think there are a lot of Oregonians that think differently about first trimester and rape and incest. And it is also documented in the United States, the youngest pregnancies that I'm aware of that we've documented are 9 or 10 years old. In the world is supposedly a 5-year-old in Peru. To me, it's horrific that we have victimized our children to this level. I am extremely worried about the implications of a child this young being able to have an abortion without parental notification. I'm very concerned about who's investigating why a child could be pregnant this young. And there's so many other pieces of that, but I am that child that would have been aborted. My mom was 17 when she was pregnant with me and went to the health department, and they said, there's no reason for you to have a child at 17 unwed. And I'm grateful she chose to keep me, because where she grew up, they all traveled to Oregon to have abortions from her state when she was a teenager. It was legal in Oregon before her state. and before Roe v. Wade was in place. So there's no reason she kept me. I'm grateful she did. But just because of that doesn't mean that other people have other decisions that they're facing. I would not want anyone to face that circumstance without support around them, and I support alternate programs that come alongside. I had bills for adoption and other options, so we actually could have a true choice. There is no funding, there's no other mechanism, but to remove an age restriction whatsoever is very horrific to me. And I watched my nephew go through breaking his collarbone at 15 and a doctor not route a single question to his mother, who's in the same room, only directing questions towards him. And he's like, why am I being asked these questions? Mom, help, at 15 years old. We need to, as Representative Javity said, we need to lift up our families, lift up our parents, and help them address these circumstances with their kids, and not teach kids that their parents are not a resource for them when they're facing some of the toughest challenges of their lives. I know we don't have to agree on the base policy, but the age thing is very disconcerting. And to have no age be involved with making these decisions that impact life is very discouraging.
Okay. I want to make sure you're finished.
Yeah.
Okay. Representative Conrad.
Thank you, Chair. Similar to my colleagues, the age, and I will specifically reference and only reference Section 24, the gender affirming care. Teenagers and youth, they are going through troubled times anyway. We all did that. And the fact that there aren't enough sideboards in this to ensure that they have adequate medical care, given the ramifications of some of the decisions that they could make and how long-lasting they could be. I have concerns that they're going to go down a path, for whatever reason, social pressures, poor decision-making skills, and that they're going to regret it, and they're going to be lifelong decisions, and they're not going to be adequately taken care of at the time when they need to be taken care of. So for me, I will be a no, because for the transgender affirming care for our youth, we need to do better for them. We need to protect them.
Okay. Representative Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've spent a lot of time in this committee talking about outliers and talking about hypothetical situations, but we haven't spent very much time talking about the harm that is being done today on people who don't have access to life-saving care. The Trevor Project says that nearly 1 in 5 transgender and non-binary youth attempted suicide in the last year. That's an alarming statistic. And those are kids often who don't have access to supportive households and don't have access to the kind of services that could save their lives. So to me, the bill is about, do we trust physicians and other providers to practice without the influence of politicians and without the influence of harassment and intimidation? And that's what the bill is doing. I think Oregonians have been very, very clear throughout the entirety of my life that they support access to abortion. And I think we should be alarmed about what's happening in other states. Abortion and gender affirming care are political football in other states, fundamental rights being stripped away from people. And to me, what this bill is about saying Oregon is not going to do that, and that we're going to continue to offer these fundamental rights. And I think that includes the full spectrum of reproductive rights and gender affirming care. And so I get that we have different opinions on the underlying measure here, but I'm proud to support this bill, and I encourage my colleagues to join me in voting yes.
Representative Dexter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This committee knows that I believe that politics should not get in the way of care. I have voted multiple times against mandates and other things, and this is an exception because politics is getting in the way of care. People are being denied access to the care that they need, that they want, because of our political discussions. And I trust physicians, I trust people to make individually accurate and appropriate decisions. And we as politicians are trying to get in the way of that. And we should take serious consideration of the implications of that. And we're seeing it. In Idaho, there will be no further American College of OBGYN member clinicians available to take care of pregnant people. They're closing they're closing hospital-based reproductive health care in 2 different hospitals in Idaho as a result of losing providers. We are not just denying abortion care, we are denying care to pregnant people, and people will get harmed as a result of this. Politics does not belong in an exam room. I also want to address concerns that the default will be to go to something that isn't in the best interest of the patient. As a clinician who engages every day in informed consent, we very much go through the risks, the benefits, the alternatives. That is part of something we have to document every single time. You can be sued for not giving someone their full choices and the implications of those choices. And to not trust that conversation and individuals to make their own decisions is frankly undermining trust that we all should have in our clinicians. And so we all say we want to hold up our clinicians and support them, and yet we don't trust them to have professional obligation discussions with our patients. And I also would caution us to go down that slippery slope. I think that's probably enough. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Deal, you've already talked. You want to
Yes, I have.
I would like
This
to get
is-
Representative Goodwin in and then
give-
myself.
give her a chance.
But I'll let you get in one more time.
All right.
Well, I will do my best not to speak politically, but to speak truthfully. And the truth is, in the state of Oregon, there's absolutely no barriers to abortion. There's complete, unrestricted abortion in this state. I couldn't even imagine this bill could find even more, that the abortion access that we have in this state is just not enough. We actually have to take away parental's consent to have an abortion. We have to expand it to areas supposedly that don't have access to abortion. It just goes on and on. Dobbs changed absolutely nothing for Oregon. It was unrestricted before Dobbs. It is unrestricted now. We tried to create some amendments to this bill that did provide choices for women, particularly the young and the confused women that maybe don't have a lot of family support in that decision, to stop and think about the truth of the child that they bear within them. Furthermore, I am so disturbed. Well, let me just say about gender. Gender is not something assigned at birth. Gender is an innate truth, and it happens at the moment of conception. It is observed at birth. And we are taking young, healthy, normal bodies and transitioning them into lifelong medical experiments. We don't have longitudinal studies. We don't really know what we're doing exactly. But there are outcomes to it, and there's big risks to this. And the fact that we're not following a really sound clinical path with these young people in counseling and therapy for a couple years minimum, that they're rushing into these decisions and severe treatments, hormone therapies and surgeries, permanent treatments, in such a short period of time is deeply disturbing to me. And we have to stop, slow down, and really consider what the outcomes are for the children that we are doing this to.
Representative Deal, do you have something really burning you need to say? Because I would prefer to let your vice chair have the last word.
Well, I want to talk about the gender affirming treatment piece.
As long as you don't use that example again.
I'm not going to use that example. I know it's disturbing, but that's why I brought it up. What I want to emphasize is we are not following a good, consistent assessment practice across the board. the standards of care that we have, and I've talked to parents, I've talked to therapists who have been in the forefront of this, of gender-affirming treatment since it was brought to the United States. We are not following good standards of care. And so what happens there is, yes, some kids are helped, but other kids are damaged. We have something in Oregon that we're following. Planned Parenthood does it, the informed consent model. You go in, you can be 18 years old, you don't need a mental health assessment, nothing. You can get hormone treatments, basically if you ask for them. That is not an acceptable standard of care. And when I talk to parents, so well, why aren't you reporting these therapists? They got clinical social workers, therapists. There's a wide array of training, and many of them have never been trained in these WPATH standards and what that is. And that's why aren't you reporting them to the medical boards? They're scared to lose their kid. They're scared to death to lose their kid.
I'm going to just say to you, I think that's ridiculous.
I'm sorry you think it's ridiculous.
I do.
Then you need to talk to some of the
I
parents
will.
that I've been talking to.
At this
Talk to
point-
the therapists that I've been talking
I
to.
will.
Point
Talk
of
to the
order.
doctors. Then tell
No,
him,
I-
he said it's
I'm gonna call the
ridiculous.
question.
I call the question, Representative Morgan. I
That's
run the meeting.
fine.
I'm the chair of the meeting. I need
With
you
all
to
due
wrap-
respect, Chair
Representative Deal, I
Nose,
need
you
to
are
wrap it up.
uninformed. And you're going to live to regret these decisions that have been made. You are uninformed. Look at what's going on in Europe.
Committee, we are here because of the United States Supreme Court decision that overturned Roe v. Wade, the Dobbs decision from last summer. House Bill 2002 does not change anything about how minors consent to their abortion care in the state. We have not changed anything. We have affirmed it. We have not changed anything. And I want to say to you, the vast majority of 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds who find themselves in a situation where they need to get an abortion, the vast majority consult their parents. But some don't, because they don't feel that they safely can. And so we are preserving that. With regard to gender-affirming care, House Bill 2002 does not change the medical standards of care for transgendered health at any age, nor does it change the medical consent of care in Oregon, as we have talked about. House Bill 2002 merely requires insurance coverage of health care that is determined to be medically necessary by a health care provider acting with acceptable standards of practice. And Representative Deal, with all due respect, I feel that the examples that you have put forward are very, frankly, inflammatory.
Chair.
No,
I would-
I'm done. We're done,
I
Representative
would
Deal. got
encourage
your-
you to look at what's going
you
on
got-
in Europe.
Representative Deal, you got
Sweden is
your
putting on the
chance.
brakes. You were uninformed.
You are wrong.
I guess Europe, UK, Norway, and Sweden are wrong too.
Representative Deal, we're done, okay? We're wrapping up, okay? I want to thank people who came to hearings and shared personal stories and waited hours to testify. It was brave to share your truth, no matter whether I agreed with you or not, whatever your personal story is, whether others here on this panel agreed with you or not. It's brave to share your truth, and I applaud people coming forward even when I don't agree. The significance of this bill should not be underestimated, and I don't think anybody takes it for granted here in this committee, or anybody that's still in the audience, or anybody that might be out there listening. Because at its core, it is about ensuring high-quality, affordable health care for all. I want to emphasize that many caring, smart, and experienced people worked with the Speaker and the Speaker's team and our Attorney General and other people in a process in developing a bill that affirms the right to abortion services in this state, that addresses some of the peculiarities of the Dobbs decision, and provides for the legal right under commercial insurance, and in some instances, things that were not covered under the Oregon Health Plan for gender-affirming care. And I want to state that I believe the vast majority of youth that get gender-affirming care, it is a process. It is not something that happens to them immediately. They work with their parents and providers, and it is a process, it is an experience. It is not something that happens immediately, overnight. It is a thing that occurs over a period of time. This bill gives people options, safe and affordable options to think through, to discuss with confidence, and medical professionals, and to make informed decisions based upon their individual and unique circumstances. In Oregon, as it's been pointed out, we have supported and protected our family and our friends in their right to these services, and we're going to continue to do that. And with that, colleagues, I'm urging a vote on this bill, and I ask the committee administrator to call the roll.
Rep. Bowman.
Aye.
Rep. Conrad.
No.
Rep. Dexter.
Yes.
Rep. Field.
No.
Rep. Javati.
No.
Rep. Morgan.
No.
Rep. Pham.
Yes.
Rep. Tran.
Aye.
Vice Chair Goodwin.
No.
Vice Chair Nelson.
Yes.
Chair Nuss.
Chair Nuss votes yes. House Bill 2002, as amended by the -5, is adopted. It's on its way to Ways and Means.
Chair,
Yes.
you're not going to close the meeting right now, are you?
I was going to close the work session. Closing the work session on House Bill 2002.